Coming up, LSU coach Ed Orgeron has made a promise to Tigers fans that's going to be pretty tough to keep. And we'll have more reaction to the picture heard around the world. It's all coming up next, right here on SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. We're glad you are with us today as we get ready to talk about the SEC here on SEC Country Live, and a lot going on here these days.
Yeah, we definitely do, and obviously the week winding down. It's been a little bit of an action-packed week, I guess.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So. By the way, I will tell you that this is my last show for a while. I'm actually going to be on a special assignment next week. Will not be on SEC Country Live, but I'll look forward to being back the following Monday. Going to be out of the studio here, so I'll look forward to seeing you a week from week from Monday, right back here on SEC Country Live. But for now, though, we got a show to do, so let's dive in and do it with all the big news around the SEC. It's our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Let me start with the LSU Tigers here for a moment. I thought that Ed Orgeron making an appearance on 104.5 The Zone in Louisiana, sports radio station there. Thought he had some kind of interesting things to say about the one issue, and we even had this come up on our show this week. The fact that for LSU, it seems like we're always talking about the need for LSU to find a quarterback, to improve the quarterback play, to have better offense. And when Orgeron made the appearance on 104.5 The Zone, including T-Bob Hebert, the former LSU player who's one of the hosts there, well, Orgeron doesn't sidestep that issue at all. He admits the quarterback has been the biggest concern for LSU, not just this year, but for many years. But he makes a promise to LSU fans, or at least what sounds like to me a promise, that things are about to get better. Take a listen to this and see if Orgeron's biting off more than he can chew here.
Quarterback. Somebody's got to step up. That's been the question of LSU around here for a long time. And we feel like we have three outstanding quarterbacks. I feel like I got a great quarterback coach in Steve Ensming, a great offensive coordinator. I think it's finally going to happen. I see talent in all these three guys. I believe in them. I do believe that we're finally going to have the quarterback that LSU's been looking for a long time.
Well, that's a tough thing to say right there. Now, if you're an LSU fan, you hope it's true. But when you come out and say that, this is the quarterback that LSU fans have been looking for a long time, we're going to find that guy this year, when you don't really get too specific about who it is, even mentioning three quarterbacks, more than just Lowell Narcisse and Miles Brennan. But, I mean, what do you make of what Orgeron has to say there?
I think this is what he had to say, and honestly, it makes me feel more comfortable for LSU fans that he actually said this. I think the silence, if he was to come out and say, boy, those guys have a lot of work to do, there's a long process ahead, we got to go through spring and see which one separates himself, and all the coach speak that you usually hear from every other program when they're trying to find a coach, that, I think I would have felt less comfortable. I think the fact that he comes out and says, boy, I like what I'm seeing right now. Now, obviously, I think he's just trying to puff up the LSU crowd a little bit, and I think, he's probably good in doing that. But I like this quarterback group more with Ed Orgeron talking him up. I think this is something he had to go through, and I don't blame him for having these words on the radio.
So what I disagree with you on, though, is this notion. You said that he had to say this, and it's good that he's talking these guys up. It's one thing once you've named a starter to sort of say things that maybe sort of build up his confidence and give him a chance to go into the season, feeling good about himself. It's another thing sort of sight unseen to say, this is the quarterback that LSU's been looking for a long time. Yeah. There's a way to interpret that all of a sudden can almost feel like over-promising and under-delivering type thing here if the quarterback results are meager for LSU this season. Even if fans don't automatically draw the line back to this comment during the offseason, there's going to be that deal of, but wait a second, you told us it was going to be fixed. You told us it was going to be better. And if you're wrong about that, then what else are you wrong about? Do you even know how to run this program if that indeed is the case?
Yeah, no, I agree with you from that perspective. I don't mean it to be like any coach needs to come out and say this. Ed Orgeron specifically, to me, though, has to say this. I think there's been this kind of, when we talk about the weeds and the woes, I feel like Ed Orgeron, you struck out on quarterbacks on signing day. Obviously, you've talked about this group you have on campus. And I think that fans are starting to look at him and go, where's the end of this? When are we going to get the quarterback? Are we going to get the kid out of Texas next year? Are we going to be able to find a guy in this group? And for him to come out and finally say, listen, quit guessing what's going on. We actually have good guys in this group. It's not always about who the future is going to be and who's coming in next class. I like the fact that he stepped out and said that.
We'll get more on this in just a moment. Let me break in, though, with a little bit of late-breaking news here. Drama from St. Louis where the SEC basketball tournament is taking place. Colin Sexton is in a game winner at the buzzer. Alabama advances here. Looking forward to, I guess, eventually playing rival Auburn here moving forward.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be playing in Auburn. It's a team they've beat, obviously, earlier in the year at one point. It's obviously going to be a tough game, but this was a must-win for Alabama's tournament chances, and they might still have another must-win against Auburn if they want to backdoor their way into the tournament. I think this is something they had to have today, and now it's just keep winning moving forward.
Cliff Nelson says Steve Ensminger is going to have either quarterback producing yards and points. Mark my words. And Cliff and a lot of the LSU fans who watch our show every day have been very adamant about this. They're high on Steve Ensminger. They think he's going to be good as an offensive coordinator. They've got every right to feel that way. All I'm saying is, if you're a coach, there's something to making your fans pleasantly surprised. Because what Orgeron says on this radio interview about his quarterback situation is, he says, hey, this is the quarterback that LSU fans have been looking for a long time. Now, all of a sudden, if the quarterback performance for LSU this season is above average, which for me is better than I'm currently expecting it to be, but if it's above average, all of a sudden now, that sort of seems below the standard that Orgeron sort of describes there at that quote. That's the problem that Orgeron has.
Yeah, no, I think the danger is because I think honestly, Danny Etling last year was above average. I think Danny Etling, when you look back at his numbers, 2,500 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, he was above average last year. And so, to me, I look at Ed Orgeron, and I would have loved it more if he'd have waited till after spring. If he'd have waited till after, whatever they call the spring game down there at LSU, if he'd have got done with that and said, boy, we feel really good about this quarterback competition. But the fact that it's coming before that leads me to a ton of questions, because it's not like he said Miles Brennan's the guy. It's not like he said Justin McMillion's the guy or Lowell Narcisse's the guy. He said we've got one guy in this room as the guy we've been waiting on. So there is some questions to be asked about that.
Final point for me on this is that this is not the kind of thing that an experienced coach would say. And a more experienced coach, a more seasoned coach, a coach with more of a polished demeanor is not saying in a radio interview what Orgeron says there. For me, that's a misspeak. For me, that's it's sort of an unforced error. And I'm not telling you it's the end of the world, but I think he's setting his own fans up for disappointment by saying, hey, we found our quarterback.
But I feel like it's along the lines of what Ed Orgeron was brought in to do. I feel like Ed Orgeron's, a recruiter, a CEO style, get the fan base pumped up, be somebody everybody can point to and say, that guy's one of us. I don't think Ed Orgeron's ever really been in the role at LSU that other head coaches are asked to. Ed Orgeron's role at LSU is different than any other coach we see in the SEC, so I don't mind him stepping a little bit outside of the box and delivering an early message.
On YouTube, Tyler Mann says Miles Brennan's going to be way better quarterback than what LSU's used to, so Tyler's happy with Miles Brennan there in that regard. Paul K., also on YouTube as well, says he likes the old school dog sweater. And by the way, over on Facebook, Jeremy Pettis can stick at them because he was making fun of him for finding an even bigger G to put on a sweater. Paul K. on the other side of things, he likes it. So Jeremy, there you go. That's all you need to know about that. All right, we'll do more of the LSU quarterback talk throughout the show here on SEC Country Live. Let me move on and talk about item number 2 on our SEC Country Live first and 10 list here today, which is the possibility that Butch Jones is about to be officially announced as an analyst at Alabama. Now, to some people, it was almost made unofficial yesterday, even if it couldn't be put in stone, no pun intended. Here's the tweet that Peter Burns put out. Picture of Butch Jones in the Alabama gear talking to Bill Belichick, who looks like he wants to be anywhere but right there. I mean, what is your reaction to seeing Butch Jones with the Alabama logo right there across his chest?
First of all, did you see any of the responses to this tweet?
Oh, there was some great,
absolutely hilarious
caption contest type stuff.
Caption
very
contest.
Funny. Very funny.
One of them said, Butch Jones quote, and then I said, let's bring a trash can to the sideline. And then you have the Bill Belichick looking off like...
No, it's really funny stuff. Another funny thing, and you actually turned my attention to this, another tweet, and maybe where did Butch Jones get this Alabama gear from? Maybe right there from the Alabama bookstore, because there was a sighting of Jones in the Alabama bookstore. And the person who tweets this out, Jackson Paisley, says the best part was somebody else checking on Google to see if it indeed was Jones walking to the Alabama bookstore. I mean, does he have to buy his own gear? Will Saban not give him some gear?
Yeah, definitely. I had some questions about it. Like, is he trying to send a sweater back to his wife or something? Like, is there something going on where he's got to find something for his kids? Because they'll hand him Alabama gear as soon as he puts his name on the dottle. And that was the other thing interesting that comes out. Obviously, there's still some contractual stuff to work out, too.
Yeah, along those lines, let me let you hear Nick Saban, who's met with reporters yesterday. He was asked point blank, we see Butch Jones, he's got the Alabama stuff on. Does this mean he's working for Alabama now? And Saban told us everything that he could.
I don't know where that is. We have issues that we have to go through to be able to hire somebody from another school, and I haven't gotten a report on where that is right now. So we are interested in him being a part of our staff.
James Perkins in the comment section says, Butch Jones says if you can't beat him, you might as well join him. And I imagine for a lot of Tennessee fans, I mean, there is something to this from James Perkins' standpoint that I do kind of also notice as well. Of all the gin joints in the world, do you have to go work in Tuscaloosa, Alabama? I mean, if you're in Tennessee And you watch this coach stumble and fall against Alabama year after year. Now, they did play them close a couple years ago, but for the most part, Tennessee against Alabama was an embarrassment. And now you are in a time when you have to rehabilitate your career. I mean, for a lot of Tennessee fans, it probably is true. It's like, you're really going to go work at Alabama as an analyst, as Nick Saban's errand boy after you couldn't get it done on the field the last few years. Vols fans, I think, have a right not to like that too much.
Well, what's been funny to me is that there has been some backlash on Twitter that I've read up that Tennessee fans love it. Tennessee fans think it's funny from some of the ones I've seen on Twitter.
Okay.
Well, you guys shipped us Jeremy Pruitt and we shipped back Butch Jones to Tuscaloosa. So there's almost a little bit of a bragging right from some Tennessee fans. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section if you think Tennessee fans should be bragging about that or if they should feel bad about it. But I think it's a weird situation all the way around. I mentioned it to you yesterday. Seeing Butch Jones with the crimson gear on and with the A on, it's going to be something that's going to take me some time to get used to. I know it's probably a good move, and we talked about the national media yesterday, talking about how Nick Saban, this is calculated by him. You get another guy in your corner, but boy, it's going to take some time to swallow that.
Rosalind Clark Mathis says Coach Saban's got the fired coaches rehab program. He has a thing for wounded birds. He's even taken some coaches from rehab, I think. But nonetheless, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I mean, this is a situation where you do sort of buy low, you sell high. I mean, Lane Kiffin was untouchable when Saban brought him in.
Yeah.
But a year later, or a little bit less than a year later, he's one of the top offensive coordinators in college football, and he got 3 really good years out of that. I'm not telling you Butch Jones gets turned into anything like that, but this kind of reaching into like the sort of bad PR, sort of tarnished reputation world of coaches, it's actually worked out pretty well for Saban in the past.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before when we talked about Hugh Freeze. It's like, do you want to go out and hire a guy who's 24 years old, that's, fresh off being a GA? Do you want him to come in as an offensive analyst? Or do you want somebody else in your meeting room that's a soundboard, that's been in these situations, that knows a little bit about clock management, that knows about end-of-the-game situations, that knows about 2-minute drills and other things that are going on. That's the reason I tend to love the move from them.
Yeah, so we'll see how it plays itself out. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I guess the one thing I would be curious about before we move on, is all this some big orchestration on Alabama's part? Because the truth is, I mean, he's not going to make very much money. He's not ever going to really be seen again by, unless you're in Tuscaloosa.
Right, yeah.
But is all of this end up being sort of like a PR orchestration, some sort of like media rollout, where Saban knows he's going to be asked about it, so therefore let's let folks see him in Tuscaloosa. We can kind of get this out of the way and get ready to move on. I mean, is it that pre-planned? Is it that orchestrated when it comes to something like this?
I don't think so. I mean, this is an avenue that Coach Saban's gone down before. I mean, you look at a guy like Dan Werner, Chris Winkie last year. Obviously Steve Sarkisian. There's a huge difference, but I don't think that. And listen, there could be the thing. Well, hey, let's get Butch Jones on campus so nobody asks us about the quarterback situation. You know what I mean? Let's throw out a little.
That's a good point. I wouldn't put that past him either.
Let's throw a flashbang that way so everybody looks that way, and then we get the quarterback competition going on here. And listen. Everything Nick Saban does is calculated, but I don't think it's that thorough to where he says, boy, Butch Jones being on campus will really take some focus off other things.
98 Sports Talk says, can the Alabama players even respect Butch Jones? I think the issue here is they won't even have that much interaction with Butch Jones, right? They're not going to have that much contact.
He'll be in the meeting room sometimes with some of these guys. He'll be watching film with the coaches, but he won't have an on-field role at all. He won't be interacting with the players on a daily basis.
All right, let's do item number 3 here in our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Obviously, Thursday represents the last day of the week for us here in SEC Country Live. A look ahead at the weekend, a big announcement coming that's going to have some impact on the Auburn Tigers is Calvin Anderson, the former offensive lineman at Rice, now a grad transfer. As he lets us know on social media, he is getting ready to make his announcement. Let's take a look at this.
At 6'5 1/4 and 302 pounds, former Rice left tackle Calvin Anderson, a graduate transfer, has caught the attention of many of the top college football programs in the country.
So that's Anderson there. You heard I like the newsman there at the beginning of this. He's getting ready to make his announcement on Saturday. Just visited Oklahoma. The SEC team in the mix here is Auburn, a program that would like to sort of really plug and play potentially Anderson as maybe even a day one starter. I guess there is some talk online that Tom Herman in Texas might be the point spread favorite here to land Anderson services. Yeah. I don't know firsthand anything about that. That's just sort of what I read on that. I mean, where do you kind of come down on this? Obviously, I think this would be a big-time addition for Auburn if it's able to be made.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you look at what they've got, obviously Calvin Ashley is going to be a big name we talk about. And Prince Tega is a guy that mixed in and out last year. But I got to tell you, I mean, the more I've watched Prince Tega's film from last year, he still is a guy that has a lot of work to do. I mean, he's a prospect that can move his feet and he can punch with his hands, and he's a big, strong guy, but when it comes to actually blocking at the point of attack, somebody tweeted out film earlier today, and I think it was maybe on Cole Kublik's account, of him trying to block Arden Key play in and play out. It was not pretty. And so I think that if you don't get a guy like Calvin Anderson, and watch those pass sets, watch Calvin Anderson in that video, keeping his shoulder square, not allowing the two-way go, being able to slam back the inside door, I have to believe that this would be a huge get for Auburn if they're able to do it. Obviously, Texas is going to be the favorite. The in-state guys, head up right up there to Austin, Texas, will be a big deal for them. But to go to Auburn, I think this changes my outlook in a lot of different ways for what Auburn's offense can be next year.
James Keith Howell on Facebook excited about the possibility. He gives us a WDE. Robbie Eversole kind of mocks. He says if he wants to be a loser, he's going to go to the Plains, roll Tide. Deepak Khanna says Rice still has a college football program. Here's the thing, though. We've seen these players from, especially the offensive line position, from relatively weaker programs come in and start in the SEC before. Tyler Catalina, who a lot of Georgia fans didn't love, is the starting left tackle for the 2016 season. But the fact of the matter is he's in the NFL now, and if he hadn't started for Georgia, who would? He came from, was it Fordham? I always forget where. Yeah. Florida brought in their guy from that same sort of northeast part of the country, much smaller program. They turned him into a starter as well. Not a great player, but a starter for the Gators all season long, going back to 2015.
Heck, Auburn even did it last year with a guy from Jacksonville State and also a guy from Florida State. Found good role players last year for those guys.
I am very high on the notion of transfers. I think that when you have a chance to add a transfer, it's almost always the right thing to do, because if it's a grad transfer, you're using a scholarship that you wouldn't be using on anybody else anyway, and you get the scholarship back when the guy's gone. To me, there's never a bad reason to consider taking on a grad transfer if you think you need any additional depth. I'm not telling you that Calvin Anderson is going to light the world on fire, although Shane Milan likes the film. He says, what a beast. So I'm not telling you he's as good as Shane Milan just suggests he is, but is having him better than not having him? I think that, for me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, to me, listen, I'm not going to act like I've seen a ton of Calvin Ashley film at Auburn. It's not a guy that's been playing a ton, obviously. But when I look at what Calvin Anderson is on that film, I have to believe he's a plug-and-play guy. I have to believe that he's better than what I saw on film from them last year. And with all the linemen they're losing, you can't tell me they're worse off having a guy like Calvin Anderson walk through the door. And you mentioned it. It's a small window. I mean, this guy's gone in 8 months. He shows up on campus. He does everything he needs to do, protects Jared Stidham's blind side, hopefully helps Auburn to win a ton of games, and then he's out of the door. So it's not like it's some kind of long-term thing. But just watching this film, watching the hip movement, watching the explosion in the arms, I have to think he is a plug-and-play starter if on Saturday he's like, you know what, I'm headed down to Auburn to be a part of that Tiger football team.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, for Auburn here, we know the offensive line, with Herb Hand gone, bringing in new name, Grimes coaching an offensive line. That's one of the hallmarks of Auburn's success last year. You got to make sure you got as many guys as you can to sort of rebuild that group for 2018. So we'll find out on Saturday. That's when the announcement's officially going to be made. We'll find out on Saturday if indeed that's the direction that he's going to go, or if he picks Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, the other three schools that he's choosing from there. So we're going to see how that plays out. Let me move on and look at item number 4 here on our SEC Country Life First and 10 list. And we have already had a couple people weigh in the comment section on this. The idea that Florida might be looking to add a graduate transfer quarterback themselves. And this is not any kind of news or any kind of official thing. This is just some speculation. It was an ask to Zach Abolverdi from SECCountry.com about the possibility of maybe Florida looking the graduate transfer quarterback route, given the fact that it's got the quarterback battle we all expect this spring between the incoming freshman Emory Jones and a guy who started a good bit last year in Felipe Franks. Well, there is a name potentially from Ohio State who has at least kicked around the idea of transferring. He actually recently had a quote about the idea. It's Joe Burrow here, who told Land of 10, that's our sister site that covers the Big Ten the way we do the SEC. He says, I have to talk to my parents about it, talk to my coaches, just make a decision here in the near future. I don't know. I'm leaning towards staying. I came to terms with it the last couple of weeks. Either way, no matter what I do, I'm going to have to come out and compete somewhere. So Burrow says maybe I may stick around Ohio State, but that's an example of a guy who's been thought to be available on the open transfer market. Zach Abolverdi wrote about that possibility at SECCountry.com, but it's kind of interesting in our comment section. Guys like Greg Steele and Scott in the comment section also kind of saying, hey, we don't want any more graduate transfer quarterback in Florida. We did that last year, it didn't work out. We want to focus on the guys we have. And I don't have any doubt that Emory Jones is likely the quarterback of the future. But once again, do you really want to give yourself the lack of insurance policy. I mean, that's what Tennessee does by bringing in Keller Christ. If you're Florida, isn't that also kind of a smart way to go down as well?
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me. I'm not really sure where I stand because on one hand, I look at it and go, first of all, the offensive transition from Ohio State under Urban Meyer to Dan Mullen at Florida, I think would be seamless. Obviously, they're going to hurt. They have probably a lot of the same terminology. I don't think this is one of the guys that's going to take a while to get adjusted to the new offensive Florida. I think he steps right in and becomes a big part. But there's also a part of me that goes, all right, if it's not Felipe Franks and you bring in another guy and he's ahead of Felipe Franks is gone. And then you're also signaling maybe that Emory Jones isn't ready and maybe Emory Jones needs more snaps on the field if that's the guy for the future. So I don't know. I fall kind of somewhere in the middle on this. I have a hard time believing that Dan Mullen's going to go after this guy really hard. But as you saw in his comments right there, he's leaning towards staying. So if he does wind up at Florida, to me, that means that Dan Mullen really, really wanted him on campus.
Charlie Jones says BA believe in transfer, but he doesn't stay for the Gators. Look, there's a very good chance this guy decides to stay at Ohio State. The truth is, I don't know that much about him anyway. But I like the idea of having more quarterbacks on the roster. And even for Jim McElwain a year ago, Malik Zaire turned out not to be as good as maybe I thought he would be when he first arrived there. I thought he was probably going to be the quarterback. But I would still say that Florida probably thought it was better having him than not.
Yeah, obviously it's a guy to turn to. I mean, listen, you end up falling back to Luke Del Rio midway through the season. But I think this is a lot about Emory Jones, how soon you think he'll be ready. I think that Dan Mullen obviously would love to get past spring practice before he ever even had to make a decision on this. But my question is this. It's like I just said. If Dan Mullen goes out and recruits this guy really hard and says, boy, you got to get on campus with us, come check out our quarterback room, come check out what we've got going on down here, then that means at some point during spring practice he thought to himself, Emory Jones is not ready to take the field.
Let me get Morgan Rechtje in here, who says he's a Florida fan. He says, I really doubt we bring in a transfer quarterback, but I could be wrong. I just see his training for the future. Here's the one problem with that, though. Obviously, we have a history of, in like the last couple of years, of seeing freshman quarterbacks in the SEC play really well. You've had, for the most part, a couple of them at Georgia, although Fromm is better than Eason. You've had a couple of them in Alabama, although I believe that Tua is a better prospect than Jalen Hurts. Jake Bentley, Drew Lock, on and on you go in the last 3 years. A freshman quarterback who played pretty well in the SEC. Emory Jones may be the next in the line of that. Or he might be a little bit more like the traditional college football story of a quarterback that's eventually pretty good, but maybe struggles a little bit as a freshman. Florida fans, because they've been conditioned by what freshman quarterbacks have done in the SEC in recent years, maybe they have higher expectations for Emory Jones. What if he doesn't live up to those as a freshman? Does that become a problem for him if there's really nowhere else to turn to? Because, I mean, I think we saw last season, with the exception of one really long pass against Tennessee, Felipe Franks just pretty limited.
Yeah, he was limited in some of the situations. The 98 Sports Talk says on YouTube page, if UF takes a transfer, I would think it would be a depth-only situation like we see at Alabama. And that might be the case. If they take anybody other than Burrow, I would think that it might be a depth situation very much like Gardner Minshew. But after reading what Burrow's comments were, like I said, about, hey, I'm leaning towards staying here, I would think it would have to take a sales job. Minshew went out of his way to find Alabama. I want to move back closer to home. I want to be on a football team that's got championship, pedigree. This is something where they're actually going to have to recruit this kid if they want to get him down to Gainesville. So I don't know if that would be a depth situation.
Rick Keene says Florida's never had success with transfer quarterbacks, but one of the things that I've been told is now Florida's got a quarterback coach as its head coach, and that better at that than Jim McElwain was. Certainly different from Will Muschamp, who was a defensive-minded coach before he came to Florida. What better way for Mullen to prove his stripes here by bringing in a transfer quarterback and maybe making something out of him? And even if he doesn't become the starter, here's the one thing I don't understand from Florida fans. Let's say that he's not better than Felipe Franks and he's not better than Emory Jones. So you tuck him there at third string, you never think about him again. I mean, what would be so bad about making Emory Jones have to work harder to earn the job? That on this particular issue, that's what I don't understand from Florida fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem for Florida fans becomes, what if he is just a little bit better than Emory Jones and actually takes the field, but isn't that good? What if he's better than freshman Emory Jones, but not better than sophomore Emory Jones? And so all of a sudden, Emory Jones, who we've said all along, boy, it'd be nice to have them out there getting the reps under Dan Mullen in year one, learning the system so that in the future he's a great quarterback. What if this stunts his growth? I think that's the problem Florida fans would have.
That's a fair question. I think you're bringing up a good point. That if you're going to have somewhat, middling average quarterback play, then you might as well let your freshman Emory Jones be the guy that struggles through that, as opposed to somebody else's issue that you kind of brought in as a Band-Aid for 1 year. If you're going to struggle at quarterback, struggle at least with your guy for the future.
That's kind of my point. Is listen, Florida's seen quarterback struggle for years now. I mean, they've had guys that have transferred and gone somewhere else and been good quarterbacks. And so why not have a guy that's going to be in your system for a long time instead of just a rent a quarterback for for 1 year.
One final comment on this, and this is coming from Facebook. Austin Holmes says, I think it shows a lack of confidence in the current depth. It's important to point out here, so far, this is just sort of media speculation of would Florida want to do this?
Yeah.
Hey, maybe they would. But if it were to actually go down and Florida does bring him in, then they know they need another quarterback. It doesn't show a lack of confidence in Emory Jones. It shows a lack of confidence in Felipe Franks, because you cannot give Emory Jones the quarterback job by default. You can't have him win it without a fight. He's got to beat out somebody for the job. And if Felipe Franks is not good enough to even put up a fight there, at that point in time, you do have to bring in a transfer quarterback, I believe.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say, to Gators fans sitting out there, I would think that the line of communication between Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer has got to be wide open. So Dan Mullen's going to know everything about this guy before they even give him a call, before they even consider what's going on, if that's an option that comes up in the future. So I would have to think that if you believe in your head coach and believe in his assessment of quarterbacks, and this guy, you do end up taking a transfer quarterback, I think you should feel good about whoever it is. 98
Sports Talk on YouTube says it tells me that Dan Mullen thinks that Emory Jones needs time to develop. Look, here's the thing, I'm just being honest, and you can criticize me for this if you want to. You don't hear very many recruiting analysts say that Emory Jones is right there in the same category of other quarterbacks from the state of Georgia, like Trevor Lawrence, who's going to Clemson, and Justin Fields, who's going to Georgia, in terms of being ready to play right away.
Right.
Emory Jones is thought of as a very highly regarded prospect, but he's not in that group of guys who are, you know what, these guys could play right away.
Right.
I think there's a gap between Emory Jones and the other quarterbacks from the state of Georgia that I just mentioned.
Right. I actually said this last week. I think that, and Gators fans might not like me saying this, but I think that Emory Jones is probably closer to Jerry Bohannon than he is to Justin Fields. You know what I mean? If we're talking about recruits coming out last year, I don't think any Florida fans would deny this guy's still got some work to do. I just think that most Florida fans feel like if he's going to have to do the work, let's not redshirt him. Let's get him on the field and let him figure it out while we're winning or losing games in year one.
Let's do item number 5 here on our SEC Country Line First and 10 list. And for a lot of Georgia fans, there's a pretty big question out there in terms of a couple guys who've had a little bit of embattlement as of late, uncertain status for the 2018 season. D'Angelo Gibbs, who I think we talked about on this show not too long ago, a former very highly regarded defensive back recruit, but not currently enrolled in classes of the spring semester. Georgia, and Natrez Patrick, a linebacker who has been a starter at Georgia, but is also coming off a bit of an uncertain status after entering into some treatment coming off an arrest that he experienced on the night of the SEC championship game. On National Signing Day back in February, Kirby Smart was asked, does Natrez Patrick, does D'Angelo Gibbs, do these two guys still have a future with the Georgia program? And here's what Kirby said.
Yeah, I think both those kids are working really hard, doing the things we've asked them to do, and be honest with you, we're trying to help them as much off the field as on the field right now.
So non-committal from Kirby Smart says we want to help them off the field as well as on the field. And listen, I don't care who you root for. I think that's what you want all these SEC guys to get. I think part of the education you get in college is that understanding of life and how to sort of deal with the things that might master you. And maybe in Gibbs and Patrick's case, that's exactly kind of what's going on here. But for Georgia fans, maybe also a hopeful note here too. Let me show you a little bit of a video. This is a video that Georgia puts out from seeing some of its football players go and visit an Athens area Boys and Girls Club. And as you watch the video, first of all, it's kind of cool to see, Georgia, like a lot of these SEC teams do, kind of giving back and spending some time in the community. And how much fun would it be if you live in the Athens area, you participate in the Boys and Girls Club, if all of a sudden you look over and you see some Georgia players kind of walking in. But what you're going to see here in a moment, though, is what's interesting from a football standpoint. There's a moment in this video where Natrez Patrick, D'Angelo Gibbs, the two players that I just mentioned, uncertain status for 2018, but they are in this video actually spending some time here with Georgia players in kind of an official capacity. Take a look right here. That's Gibbs on the right. That was Natrez Patrick on the left. There in the video. Mike, do you take that as a good sign that Patrick and Gibbs may be on their way back to Georgia? It's worth pointing out here that Gibbs is not even currently enrolled in classes.
Right. No, I think it's a great sign for them. And the way these things typically go too. When I was around the Bama program is these guys have to climb out of the doghouse at some point, right? They have to start to get back into the good graces of their head coach, of their position coach, and of their teammates. So when these opportunities come available for opportunities like this to go to the Boys and Girls Club to do some stuff in the community, these guys obviously first ones with the hand up. Hey, I'd love to be a part of this, and obviously that's what you're getting here when you start to see scenes like this. And I mentioned, after the thing when Natrez Patrick happened after the SEC title game, the question was, would he play in the Rose Bowl? You did. I didn't want to hear that question at the time. Listen, let's make sure this guy's okay in the long run. And Kirby Smart ended up coming out and echoing that, which I thought was a great call on Kirby's part. Let's not worry about the football game. Let's make sure this guy's healthy moving forward. So I love the fact that we see him on the video screen. They're being helpful inside the community. I think it is. I do read a lot of it. It's almost like looking at the hats on signing day.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a great sign that these guys are appearing in this video.
98 Sports Talk on YouTube says, I love how Kirby Smart completely dodged answering the tough question about his players that are in trouble. On this, though, I'm not going to criticize Kirby Smart for that, and I don't believe I'd criticize any other SEC coach either. What you're talking about is some off-field issues. Now, the arrest for Nate Patrick was public. Everybody knows about that. But whatever subsequent issues kind of stem, after that arrest, I mean, doesn't Nate Patrick deserve a little privacy for that? Doesn't whatever D'Angelo Gibbs has gone through, doesn't he also deserve a little bit of privacy too?
Yeah, I mean,
do. I don't mind giving a little bit of a firewall around these players and stuff like this. And people say, well, you just say that because they're Georgia guys. Hopefully I'd say that about all the SEC guys. I don't feel like we have a right to know every single thing that's going on in every single aspect of all these players' lives, especially if what they're going through is maybe tough for them and causing them to, maybe have to think about life away from football for a moment. Give them a little bit of privacy, let them work through that.
Listen,
right?
we've talked about this a few times here in the last year. We've gone through some of these arrests, and I keep trying to draw the line for people that these are not professional athletes. These are amateur guys. Obviously, they're public figures, but they're not getting paid to go out and do this. They're not getting paid to be in the public eye and be part of all these talking points around college football. Listen, I'm all about the privacy. I don't care what school it's at. I don't care if it's somebody that you hate to root for. Give the guys the privacy when it's necessary.
By the way, the comment section, Teresa Stewart is a Tennessee fan, also likes the idea of these guys doing this kind of stuff. And it's one of the cool things about the SEC. And, somebody kind of had, Rick Keene says this charity or community service. And you can have kind of a cross look at this if you want to. But honestly, even for, the schools that I don't like the Floridas and the Auburns, and I pick on you, the Alabama, this is one of the cool things that you see in the SEC. There is a lot of this idea of these players are giants in the communities where they come from. And,
right.
You do see the SEC kind of, taking a step towards putting them out there and helping out kids in the community. That's kind of a cool thing.
No, I think it's awesome. I mean, I think just this past week, Bama's players were out building a habitat house. You see this all around the SEC.
That's a good example. Saban working on that.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing, and anytime you get a chance, because these guys are starting to realize more and more with social media, because social media was not really around when I got to college. Starting to realize that the impact they can have more and more with some of these kids around town.
All right, item number 6 here on our SEC Country Line First and 10 list. Back to the Alabama quarterback situation, because after all, we haven't talked about that yet on today's show. I feel like we may be contractually obligated to do that at some point in time. And a couple big names kind of weighing in on what they think could happen with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. Let me start with a guy who would know this situation pretty well, the former Alabama quarterback himself, Blake Sims, who had great success at the Crimson Tide going back to 2015. And on the subject of maybe playing both Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, well, here's what Blake Sims told 24/7 Sports. Oh, yes, sir. I think that would be very good. I think it would be harder for the defense to prepare for our games because both quarterback strengths are different. You've got to accept what you get. And Coach Saban's the GOAT. That means the greatest of all time for the uninitiated. He'll make sure we do the right thing. I'm looking forward to this season. I'll be there every game, too. That's Blake Sims, the former Alabama quarterback. Another guy weighing in on this situation as well is the now former Alabama wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, who also likes the idea of potentially playing two quarterbacks. Told 24/7 Sports, I wish I was playing here to tell you, but I ain't here. I don't know. They're going to find some way to get both those great football players to be playing and helping this team. That seems like almost a prediction as well, that there's room for both Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa within the Alabama offense. What do you make about all that?
Yeah, it's tough. I think from the outside looking in, and just from like a fan perspective, being able to look at this situation and say, boy, they've both got, they're both really good players, both really good quarterbacks, both have won some games, both can do special things, and they have an opposite kind of skill set. And I think from the outside looking in, you look at it and say, boy, that could really be a great marriage. And if that does happen next year, I think 98% of the time it will be a great marriage. My problem with it comes from being a guy that was inside one of those huddles. When things start to go south, when your offense is struggling, you bring in Jalen, all of a sudden does he throw a bad pass? When you bring in Tua, all of a sudden does he take a sack or throw an interception you shouldn't have? Then all of a sudden the offense is left guessing, boy, who do we turn to now? Which guy's going to be on the field? Who's really going to be the leader? I think they've got the players around the quarterback position, on the offensive line, at the running back position, at Damian Harris, some of the wide receivers, to really take up that slack and be leaders. But I just have questions about how that would work inside of the huddle. Not so much like who's going to throw it, who's going to run it, but how that would work inside the huddle would be my concern.
Two really good comments here. I want to make sure we get them both in. Bo Molinari says there's room for two players, but maybe not two egos. I think that really is true. We've seen some visual evidence of how Hurts may have handled this, of how Tua Tagovailoa may have handled this. We had some of those video images on the show the other day right after the announcement was made. It is really true that you got to be careful here that the competition between Hurts and Tua doesn't turn into the kind of controversy that divides the team.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden some guys are on one side, some guys are on another. Were you ever part, and I don't remember, but were you ever part of a divided locker room on a quarterback issue at any point in time in your playing career?
No.
I can't really remember.
Yeah, we didn't really have any quarterback controversies at any point, but we did, my senior year, we did go through a dry spell in the passing game where I think we went through 3 or 4 games where we didn't score a passing touchdown. So, but I think what was nice about that is Greg McElroy is our quarterback, and you could rally behind Greg. Say, listen, everybody's got to pick it up. We got to give Greg more time. We got to let the receivers' routes kind of open up. And you could rally behind that. My question is, if that situation were to arise next year for Alabama, and Jalen hasn't done something, or Tua hasn't done something, are you looking at the sideline going, okay, when's the next guy coming in?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think that's really where I think things can turn south. Listen, Alabama's good enough offensively to where they might not need a throwing quarterback for 10 out of 12 games on the schedule. But when those two do come around, it would be an interesting dynamic to me.
I think Rick Keene's comment's also pretty good here too, who says, other than last year, has anyone ever known who the starting quarterback is going to be for Nick Saban? You're right. Saban does have a history of kind of dragging these quarterback situations into the beginning of the season. The competition is sort of ongoing even during the month of September. But here's the thing about Saban recently, and this is what makes this conversation this year more interesting than normal, is the fact that when Saban picked Jalen Hurts, that was an unorthodox decision for him up until that point in time.
That's a great point.
His quarterback situations had almost always dragged on, but when it was over with, he almost always picked the more experienced player.
Yeah, he did.
Never been in the system longer. But when you picked Hurts, that's a freshman, you sort of broke that mold. Benching Hurts at halftime of the national championship game broke whatever mold there was left over. So when it comes to Saban this season, we've seen 2 consecutive years of pretty unorthodox situations. I don't know that we now can say, well, here's what Saban does, because he always does this in the past. He's sort of doubled back on himself now in consecutive seasons. I think we're entering an era in which his quarterback handling may now be unpredictable.
Yeah, now he benches the guy that has more experience, and the quarterback throws another true freshman into the game. So, listen, I have to go back to one of the comments too. You wonder about the egos in the locker room. I don't think this would be an ego situation. I think both these guys are well versed enough and like each other enough, seemingly on the outside right now, anyways, that I don't think egos would be a problem. Nick Saban usually does a good job of stamping out the egos within the program, and I think a lot of his coaches that have coached under him do the same thing. But it's the dynamic to me inside of the huddle, inside of the working offense. It would be my thing. I don't think the egos will be a part of it, in my opinion.
Colin Vecina, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, says, as long as they can seamlessly transition in and out or in sync with the rest of the offense, I'm confident they can work. I mean, here's the thing, too, and you kind of touched on this before as well. I mean, Alabama's going to be such a big favorite in almost all of its games this season. I mean, maybe you do just avoid the controversy altogether. I don't think this would happen. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe you just avoid the controversy altogether and just split up the time even. Let Tua have half of it. Let Jalen have half of it. You're going to win the games anyway. There's no question with the quarterback anymore, because you're like, hey, until we need to make a decision, we'll let both these guys play an equal amount of time. It probably works out from a recruiting standpoint. Recruits like to play. You're giving both guys a chance to play. It's only if one guy becomes ineffective that you can't do that. And against most of the teams that Alabama's going to be beaten up on, even Jalen Hurts could probably do well.
Yeah, that's like a little underhanded compliment there from BA. But, I mean, I agree. Listen, I would not be shocked to see them come out against Louisville and rotate possessions, rotate drives. Jalen gets one drive, Tua gets one drive. And like I said, we've seen that before. When A.J. McCarron was taking over, it was him and Phillip Sims, and it might have been Star Jackson. Heck, I can't even remember back that far. But you had these guys battling back and forth, seeing who could kind of take the reins. And obviously, A.J. McCarron did and ended up being the starter. And both those other guys ended up transferring. So I wouldn't be shocked to see it start like that. But my question is, in the end game, would Nick Saban be trying to find one quarterback by midseason? That's the big question.
Chad Clark says, well, they both have to get the same haircut if they both start. I like what somebody else in the comment section earlier. Maybe they both get the Butch Jones sort of high and tight look. maybe the Bama barbershop will get that done for them. Teresa Stewart brings up an interesting point. She says quarterback is one of the leaders. On Alabama, is that true, though? I mean, you play for the Falcons in the NFL. Matt Ryan, your quarterback, I imagine he was one of the leaders of the team. But for a program like Alabama, is the quarterback the leader of the Alabama team typically?
It doesn't always have to be. And that was, that wasn't a dynamic. When I was a senior, obviously, I was a captain on the offense, and we had Javier Arenas was a special teams guy, and Rolando McClain was a defensive captain. And you were able to kind of put that in because, look at Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's been with the Falcons, 10 years now? I think he's been a part of that team. So he is the leader. I mean, he's the guy that's in there. He's working out all the kinks of the offense. When you have a guy that's 18-year-olds the way Jalen Hurts was when he first became the starting quarterback, or Tua was in the national championship game, those guys don't always have to be the leader. You look at a guy like Damian Harris, you look at a guy like Ross Pierce-Baker, you look at a guy like Calvin Ridley last year. Those guys can take over that role in college football.
All right, let me do item number 7 here on our SEC Country Live 1st and 10 list, and maybe a little bit of a slide against a former Auburn player looking to make a big impression on the NFL. Todd McShay, the ESPN NFL draft analyst, told AL.com that he's not that impressed with former Auburn running back Carnell Johnson, at least when it comes to being a starter at the NFL level. Here's the analysis from McShay on Carnell Johnson. He says, I think in terms of power, he's missing some. He runs hard, he's aggressive, he's physical, and he'll just throw himself into defenders' arms, lower his shoulder, and do all the other things that you're supposed to do. However, I just don't see that strength to drive through contact as much as you want to see in a top back. I think there are some weaknesses there, some challenges there. What do you make of Carnell Johnson being slighted or being maybe judged harshly there by Todd McShay?
This was tough for me, and really, I haven't loved all of Todd McShay's analysis on all his prospects, and he's obviously, I think he would admit that he misses some and he hits some, but I had to take a step back because I'm a huge Carnell Johnson fan. We've talked about it a bunch on the show. I love his running style. I think his running style and his ability to set up blocks is an offensive lineman's dream. That's why he's so successful. And I think at Auburn, he did take over football games, and he was forced to be a feature back. Now, I think that if Todd McShay's talking about durability and talking about injury history, that's one thing to me. Maybe he's worried about, can he be a feature back? Is he going to get dinged up along the way? It's a long season in the NFL. That's fine for me. But in terms of being a feature back, I'm not really sure what else you're looking for in Carnell Johnson. Maybe he's not as low to the ground and powerful as as some of the other running backs, but I think dynamically, I think he fits a lot of different skills. I think he can do so many different things for your team that maybe that's not the tough yards up the middle where he's breaking arm tackles on defensive linemen, but he can catch some of these passes and make people miss in the flat.
Maurice Carter says Todd McShay speaks the truth. That's a Georgia fan kind of down on the Auburn running back. Bo Molinari, though, the opposite side, says, did McShay see the freaking Auburn versus Texas A&M game? And I think for a lot of SEC fans, they look at what Carnell Johnson did this year and they say, hold on, we've been watching this guy for a whole season. When he was healthy before the injury towards the end of the season, we saw a guy who was essentially a Heisman Trophy candidate. Now all of a sudden, this haircut's going to swoop in here and tell me that Carnell Johnson can't play. I think this is one of the things that turns people like me off on the NFL. I mean, McShay may be right, and maybe Carnell Johnson doesn't quite make it at the next level, but you know what? I also was told that Deshaun Watson was going to be good for the Houston Texans, and he's great. And kind of on you can go of like guys that we've seen be college stars, and all of a sudden, NFL super serious draft analysts want to show you how smart they are by telling you everything that's wrong with these games. And if you show out against elite competition in college football, give me that guy on my NFL team every day of the week.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, too, it's just tough for me because there's so many different dynamics as far as the way offenses work in the NFL. The way Big Ben does it is not the same way Tom Brady does it, and that's not the same way Matt Ryan does it, and that's not the same way Drew Brees does it. Every offense is seemingly different in the NFL, so this guy can find an niche. I feel like these draft analysts, Mel Kiper's the same way. They try to plug these guys into a role. Listen, Trent Richardson can run through all the arm tackles you want to. He didn't pan out in the NFL. And I feel like these guys look at this, boy, what's his broad jump? Is he running through arm tackles? Is he making people miss in open space? They try to fit everybody into one offensive scheme, and there's a million of them to go around. They don't all have to look the same.
Dalton Mason does bring up a good point. I'll acknowledge this as a good point, even though I just defended Carnell Johnson. He says the NFL has way better tacklers than college. He's not going to break the tackles like he did. I will admit that's probably a fair point that, you can get by in college. You can add to your highlight reel by making some poor tacklers miss. In the NFL, the thought is you don't have the same. Hopefully, NFL has sort of eliminated the idea of a poor tackler just based on the fact that it's the highest league available.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that somewhat, but give me his elusiveness, and I'll tell you that, he's special in that way to where he doesn't have to break as many tackles as some of the other running backs. You have these running backs that just, and somebody brought up Brandon Jacobs' name. Just, he's hammering straight through. He's hitting the gap. Michael Turner was that way.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm going to hit this thing running. Don't care if anybody's in front of me. I'm dragging you for 5 yards, and I don't care who it is. Carnell Johnson's not that style. That's my point. Is he can get out in the flat, make somebody miss. He can do some of these zone read options. Whoever's left on the backside, cut it up and get inside and get his 5 yards.
Another good point by Bo Molinari, who says that he says, no, this is actually Rick Keene who said this. I apologize, Rick. He says, who would have predicted that what Alvin Kamara has done? It surely wasn't Todd McShay. That's another good point. Although I guess you could say that Butch Jones is the guy who sort of held Alvin Kamara back. Maybe more people would have predicted success for him if they could have seen more of him on the field for Tennessee. Morgan Rechian also says that Carnell Johnson's a heck of a back. They love Trent Richardson coming out of college. I could see Johnson being a sound running back. And yeah, Trent Richardson for a while sort of ruined it for a lot of running backs. His incredibly poor vision, and I think that's what it was, right? You guys just couldn't see holes. I mean, he almost wrecked the idea of a first-round draft pick running back for a while. It's kind of changed now, but Richardson ruined a lot of wallets for a lot of would-be NFL running backs.
Yeah, boy, it was tough, and obviously, I was a guy that blocked for Trent, and so I love Trent to death.
True. How many times did he run right in your back?
Boy, yeah.
You don't have to answer that.
No, I'm not going to answer that question. And it wasn't a ton. I mean, obviously, he's a great running back in college. That's when I blocked for him, but it didn't work out in the NFL, and you did wonder about his vision. That's kind of one of the things. It's kind of one of the things I'm pointing to. Listen, there's so many different dynamics. There's so many skill sets to have. You don't have to point to one and say, boy, you know what? Since he can't run through arm tackles, there's no way he's ever going to be a premier back in the NFL. And honestly, to kind of go to McShay's point on this, a lot of the offenses do feature 1- and 2-back systems. A lot of you got DeMarco Murray and some of these other guys that are in these 2-back systems in the NFL now. So I don't want to just say he's just completely wrong because he says he can't be a feature back. I think he would excel at being a number 2.
By the way, we have some really good stuff on Alvin Kamara later on in our show. A couple comments from YouTube before we move on. Garrett Grieger says, and I hope I pronounced that name correctly, Garrett, he says, Carnell Johnson would benefit from a running quarterback. That might be true. 98 Sports Dog also sort of making fun of me for eating a ribeye. Listen, nobody likes a ribeye better than me. I love a good ribeye
too, yeah.
You give me a good ribeye, I'll be very happy. These rosy cheeks that you always make fun of, you can imagine how rosy they get after some meat. After I get a good meat sweat going after a big ribeye,
oh man,
bone in, 30 ounce, whatever. Yeah, I can polish that thing off.
No, I'm all over that. That sounds really good.
Yeah, it actually sounds pretty good right now, to be honest with you. But we got work to do before we can worry about that. Let me do item number 8 here. On our SEC Country Line 1st and 10 list, Arkansas coach Chad Morris makes an appearance on a radio program that the SEC Network's Peter Burns was doing. And Peter tweets out some comments from Chad Morris that I didn't know Chad Morris had this in him, but apparently pretty entertaining, including a pretty bold statement from the new Hogs coach, but the future of the Razorbacks. Here is Peter Burns on Twitter quoting Chad Morris saying, "It's eerily how similar Arkansas is to what Clemson was 7 years ago. It's a sleeping giant waiting to be woken up." He also says, "I like waffles and Red Bull in the morning." Now, I don't think those two statements were connected. I think that's just Peter Burns giving a couple of examples of some of the things that he said. But what do you make of the notion of Chad Morris, where he was offensive coordinator, comparing Arkansas to Clemson? He says, this is a sleeping giant, just like Clemson was. You buying that notion?
Listen, I love to hear it. I don't know if I'm buying it. I think, listen, I got to give a shout out to Eric Bolin on the SEC Country Arkansas site, who comes out and says, right now, Arkansas is more like Rip Van Winkle. If you really want to start comparing people, I mean, they're still asleep, and somebody's got to wake them up. I think they've got to start finding players, though, and I think that's up to Chad Morris to do. And we've talked about if he's going to climb out of that kind of cellar mode that Arkansas is in right now, you got to do more with less. They've got to find their Taj Boyd. They've got to find their Deshaun Watson. They've got to find those special players that have been coming out and making Clemson so special in past years. That's how they got it turned around. They started recruiting at a higher clip, started playing better on the field. They started developing an offense under Chad Morris. I do love the fact that he points to Clemson, because obviously he was around for that turnaround. He was there for 4 years, as a Clemson offensive coordinator. So that's something he can point to and say, boy, I was in the building for that.
Yeah.
But they've got to start finding the players. And I think we've asked so many questions about Arkansas, what they have on the roster right now, what they didn't get in recruiting. And I think at some point that's got to start turning around if that sleeping giant's going to be woken up.
So for South Carolina in 2019, there is a 5-star player in the state of Georgia. I'm sorry, in the state of South Carolina, a 4-star player from the state of South Carolina. The reason why I bring this up is because if you're going to compare Arkansas to Clemson, you got to compare the two states where they're in. So you've got a 5-star and a 4-star. The third best player, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite Player Ranking, is a 3-star. Let me see if I can quickly.
And by the way, you lost Jerry Bohannon to Baylor this year. So if you're going to. if you're going to wake up the sleeping giant, like we talked about recruiting, it's got to start with getting the players that you should get, and Arkansas didn't do that at all times this past year.
For Arkansas, I got to admit the results are a little bit different than I thought there would be. For Arkansas for 2019, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 4-star players in the state of Arkansas. So technically, there are more 4-star players in the state of Arkansas than there are 4 and 5-star players in the state of South Carolina. Maybe that means they aren't that different. I mean, my opinion on this is a little bit different than I thought it would be, especially if you can get into Texas, where Arkansas is very close to, just across the state line there. I mean, maybe there is a why not Arkansas type thing. The one thing that Arkansas has going forward that a school like Clemson, who Chad Morris compares it to, does not have is money. I mean, Arkansas has got the Walmart money. It's got the Jerry Jones money. It's got the, Tyson chicken. There's a lot of big-time alumni, very deep pockets. Arkansas's got that in a way that most universities don't.
Yeah.
You know what? I was going to mock Chad Morris this a little bit. The truth is, I mean, calling Arkansas a sleeping giant is probably not actually that factually inaccurate.
Listen, I actually love the Waffles and Red Bull comment too out of Chad Morris, because we've talked about it. I don't know how much personality the guy's showing, and we saw him, rappelling from the roof at the recruiting event or whatever it was, and we figured out that was a different person and it didn't look quite as cool. So to start to learn his personality, I think that signals that a lot of recruits maybe are starting to learn his personality too. But again, it comes back to, like you said, they've got to be able to sign those guys. It's not just about having them in the state of Arkansas. Get them on board. Find whoever that next quarterback is going to be in Chad Morris's system. That's when I'll start believing.
Dwayne Rourke says more 4-stars have visited Arkansas campus in the last 3 weeks than Bielema ever had. Arkansas also has some of the nicest facilities in the SEC. That's spoken from a guy that sounds like he's been following that situation pretty closely. So you know what? I'm gonna give Morris a bit of a thumbs up on that statement.
Yeah, I don't mind at all, and I believe that Chad Morris is the right guy for the job at this point in time. I really do. I think you have to give him every benefit of the doubt, because the fact of the matter is, we talked about this at times last year in this same March, April, May. Arkansas just wasn't going to be any good. I mean, they had such a flat roster. They've got a little bit of talent coming back in the receiving core this year, but you're not sure what you're getting. And maybe their running backs can kind of pick it up, and maybe this new offensive system kind of lights a fire.
But if we're going to say these good things about Arkansas, it's also, you got to point out here, they are long climb back. This is the SEC right now. So the future may be bright. I think Arkansas is in bad shape.
That's kind of what I mean. Season. Go out and find, your Mike Williams at receiver. Go out and find your Taj Boyd. Go out and find, whatever it was, CJ Spiller or whoever it was that ended up getting Clemson back to the top. They've got to find those players first.
All right, item number 9 here in our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Nick Fitzgerald, the quarterback, who's going to be a really big topic when the preseason talk really kicks into gear in the summer. Those magazines hit newsstands. A lot's going to be written about Nick Fitzgerald, assuming he can come back from the injury that he suffered at the end of the 2017 season. But as far as that recovery goes, we've got some evidence that suggests that he's actually heading in a positive direction. Here is Fitzgerald, who shared this himself, running for the first time here. Well, the best I can tell, looking pretty good. That's not an all-out sprint. There's obviously no defense on the field trying to knock him down, but how excited are you about seeing Fitzgerald back running again?
I think it's a big deal. And listen, we talked about this before. I'm in kind of a unique position to be able to talk about this injury, because I had the same injury. The ankle dislocation, the fractured fibula, the cartilage tear. I had all that. The foot facing the other direction, the whole bit. And what he's doing right now is tough. I'm telling you right now, an extremely long road back from an injury like that to be able to, I had to have microfracture. I still have screws and pins and plates and all that in my ankle. So to see him jogging around, and what has it been, 4 months since the injury, right there at the Egg Bowl, I think it's been about 4 months since then. It's a big deal. I mean, it really is. It cannot be understated how big of a deal. Now, obviously, quarterback position is a little bit different than offensive line with me. I had to push off my ankles and push around big fellas. So if Nick Fitzgerald can just get back to 50% right now, just 4 months out, I have no problem stating that he's going to be almost back to 100% by the time the fall starts. I think it's a huge cue for that team.
So obviously, we say this from time to time. If it's not your team, if it's not your rival, I think the thing we all kind of feel is, hey, how about just as many good players in the SEC as possible? It makes every Saturday as fun as it can be. When it comes to Fitzgerald, here's my question. Assuming that what you just said is right and he is healthy again and he's ready to go kind of at full steam this fall, is this just the good player on a team that's not really all that consequential, or is Fitzgerald good enough as a quarterback that all of a sudden he raised the fortunes of Mississippi State? We've talked about the idea of getting that 10th win for a program like Mississippi State or a program like South Carolina. Is Fitzgerald good enough for the Bulldogs there to find double digits?
I think he is. I think that he's that kind of quarterback. And obviously, listen, if Dan Mullen was still at Mississippi State, I'd be looking at that Nick Fitzgerald running and saying, boy, y'all got to be looking at 10 wins next year. You've got to be looking at really doing some damage, some things that Mississippi State hasn't done in quite some time. I do have questions about Joe Moorhead. How is he going to use Nick Fitzgerald? Is he going to ask Nick Fitzgerald to pass more? Is he still going to use his running ability to the top, back there with Aris Williams and the offensive line that they should have? I have questions about that, but Nick Fitzgerald, to me, is the first check mark in that direction. So I have no problem with Mississippi State fans seeing that video and getting excited because, listen, how many times we've mentioned it? 18 of 22 starters back, something like that, 19 of 22 coming back from Mississippi State. That by far, that guy is worth 5 of them. That is that big of a position for him.
Cody Ryland says, when y'all going to talk about some LSU football, all we're waiting on is a quarterback to wake us up. We've got all the talent in the world just waiting on a quarterback to turn us up. Cody, check out the beginning of the show, either on Facebook when this ends, or you can check out YouTube from the beginning right now, and you can see us with our thoughts on the quarterback situation. You can check that out on SEC Country Live, both on YouTube and on Facebook. Bo Molinari, going back to Nick Fitzgerald, says, this kid is good. Here's a team, he means Mississippi State, that deserves all the hype y'all give Florida. He says you're hyping up Florida too much.
I am?
That's what he says.
Well, listen.
It certainly ain't me.
I have to fill the gap in here, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not getting any of it from over here, so I have to raise the bar.
Don't start that kind of stuff. You're just going to stir people up.
I am high on Florida. I think that they have to find a quarterback, but I think that they have enough people in my mind I'm just excited about the strength and conditioning staff down there. I'm excited for these Florida players that they're going to have Nick Savage because I know what that looked like in my own career. Getting a guy in Scott Cochran in the building that knew what Division I football players were supposed to look like sent us to the next level. And so I think that's what's going on down there right now.
Speaking of strength and conditioning, maybe that's something that Alabama coach Nick Saban could have used. Let's make that the subject of item number 10 here on our SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So Saban, good enough to go to the Alabama baseball game and throw out the ceremonial first pitch, which is actually kind of a cool thing to do. And we've talked about ceremonial first pitches on this show probably more than almost any other show on media has. I think these are kind of a tricky thing to pull off, as evidenced by Nick Saban here, who, he doesn't quite get it to home plate. Here is Alabama coach Nick Saban. Take a look at this. So he's got the sweater on. I don't know why he's always dressed like Mr. Rogers, but nonetheless.
Old man swag, 66.
The bounce, listen, this thing, he barely even makes the dirt here. What's a little bit troubling to me is, that's the raw video of Saban clearly not getting it there. But watch what the Alabama video department does. I don't know how they got this camera angle. Whoever shot this should get an Oscar because they sort of make it seem like the pitch was much better than it really was. Here is Alabama. The zoom in on Saban. Watch this. The way that he throws it, the slow motion here. You almost need like the Chariots of Fire music. You cannot tell how bad. Look at the winds. Poor Saban. He must have some rotator cuff issue. You can't tell that he missed it at all, although he does sort of go stone-faced when he hits the ground. I'm not sure what's more interesting here. The sort of bad job that Saban actually does on the pitch, or the good job that the Alabama video department does with its official feed here of making it seem like he's knowing right. I'm not sure which of these is the more interesting part of all this.
Yeah, there was a part of me. By the way, that's Keith Holcomb doing the catching of one of Alabama's middle linebackers, doubles as a baseball player too. He's a guy that was in for Dylan Moses and after some of the injuries and played against a big role against Mississippi State last year. I got to admit, when I started watching the video, I was looking for like the George W. post 9/11 at Yankee Stadium. Tears that thing together, throws a strike. I'm thinking for sure Nick Saban's going to throw a strike right here. Bounced it a little bit. I was a little bit let down, I'll give you that. There was great camera work though, but we're not going to show the bottom of this thing. Doesn't matter where it goes. The only thing that matters is
it's a great camera shot, right? It's like you sort of leave you hanging. How does it go or whatever? Honestly, it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sure Alabama fans are screaming this at their device as they watch the show. The chance of me standing on the mound throwing a strike are not great either.
Oh, my God.
Saban was actually standing a little closer to the mound than some people of his age typically do.
Listen, I was a pitcher in high school. I've thrown out one of these first pitches before. I was shaking.
You could actually say he's actually on the mound.
Yeah. He's about a foot off the rubber. But I'm telling you right now, I was shaking when I had to do this in front of a crowd.
Can somebody from Alabama baseball help my coach out, though, from Alabama?
He gets lessons all the time from the golf coach.
But how about you just say to him, hey, coach, you don't have to go stand on the mound. It's not an official pitch.
Well, he didn't want to walk. I think, listen, you're going to go up there with some gusto, put your toe on the mound and throw a strike. Just didn't end up working out. You don't want him to go up there and soft toss it into the catcher and be like, hey, I'm good.
Listen, the SEC right now got a lot of young, very energetic guys. Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, he's throwing a strike from 60 feet, 6 inches.
That's probably true. I would think that most of the other coaches couldn't even probably get it there.
A lot of them probably couldn't.
Yeah. I can't think that Ed Orgeron's going to throw a strike.
Butch Jones would have thrown it the wrong direction.
I don't know about Chad Morris, but I know for sure Brett Bielema wouldn't have got it close.
Oh, no. Brett Bielema out there be out there in a uniform that wouldn't fit. All right, nonetheless, here on SEC Country Live, we're always looking to close up the shows the same way every day. We're always looking for champions of life. And somebody actually mentioned this guy a little early in the show, and this is actually pretty perfect. It's Alvin Kamara, former Tennessee running back with the New Orleans Saints, the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. And from this training video from his Instagram, you get a sense of why Kamara is having the success at the NFL that he is. He's got the weight bench here, and he's using the weight bench to, I guess, stabilize himself. I'm not really quite sure what the purpose of the bench is, but he's also pulling a Jeep. Now, here's the thing, and I hate to sound like an idiot. I've asked you this before. If the Jeep is in neutral, is this hard?
It depends on who's behind the wheel and is he pumping the brakes. Because that's usually what you get when you're doing stuff like this car. Somebody's behind the wheel, some coach probably overweight, sitting back there eating a cheeseburger and french fries, and he's pumping the brakes, and you're ready to dog cuss the guy. My problem with this video is, I'm not sure what exactly he's working out here. It's like some leg stabilization, but really, if you're going upwards and you're walking forward, I think this is too much for me. I don't know if he's really getting as much out of this workout as it looks like.
It is one heck of a good show.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
It's a great show.
And by the way, Tennessee fans gotta love that he's repping the Tennessee stuff.
We're in the Tennessee, the T there.
Power T.
You gotta love that.
No.
But here's what's amazing about this. I'm not quite sure if that's much of a workout either, but later on, or at least the same week, after putting the big workout together, Kamara also rewards himself. He bumps into a troop of Girl Scouts selling some Girl Scout cookies. He stands there, poses the picture for them, then goes a step further. We also see on social media here that he actually buys 25 boxes of Girl Scout cookies and puts them in the freezer. I relate a lot more to this than I do the pulling the Jeep with the weight belt. I got to tell you here. 25 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. Could you do some damage with those?
Oh my God, those caramel delights or whatever those cookies are. And boy, that's my go-to.
I'm pretty weird. I'm a picky eater. I actually don't like Girl Scout cookies that much.
Really?
The only ones I like are the ones that everybody else hates. Those like really plain butter cookies that they're called tagalongs or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the only ones I like. Oh, I
like the coconut ones. I don't eat a lot of sweets. My downfall is like pizza and ribs and stuff. Yeah, my downfall is like the pizza, rib, and steaks you guys are talking about, the hot dogs. But the Girl Scout cookies, I can definitely get into some of those coconut ones.
All right, quick reminder, I am on special assignment next week, not on vacation. Special assignment for me. Will not be here doing SEC Country Live. I'm sure some of you would be happy to have a break from me. I will be back the following Monday, though, to kind of get back to the conversation here. Enjoy Mike next week. We've got also some special guests kind of lined up as well to help carry you through the afternoon. As I said, I'll see you the following Monday. For now, though, check out our podcast. We'll have it up for you on Apple Podcasts and the various devices here. You can also share the show with your friends on YouTube and Facebook. Let them know we're talking about the SEC here each and every afternoon. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. We'll see you again very soon for another episode, very soon, of SEC Country Live. Y'all have a great weekend.